Over to you, Jamila. We are live.
We are live. Sorry, I'm still waiting for you, Anissa. It's just been such a hectic Friday today, as it usually is. But welcome,
Yes.
everybody. Welcome to our episode 16, I think it is. So it's been
Yes.
16 straight weeks that we've all been together and have gathered here on a Friday afternoon. And we want to thank everyone who's so religiously come on every week and been a part of the community and the family. But today, I want to especially welcome our very special guest and my friend Louren. And Louren and I met within the course of last year, it was, where we both were on a mindfulness teaching workshop with Mindful Revolution. And we've managed to keep the friendship and the connection. And I am just so enriched and thankful for that friendship with you. So, Louren, let me just quickly give an introduction um, to you, or would we rather just have you introduce yourself? I'm so sorry if I'm finding a
That's
little bit
fine,
of
Jamila. So, as Jamila
technicalities
correctly
here.
pointed out, we met through some of our own mindfulness learnings. And I think, as part of my bio, is probably one of the most important things to say is I sit here as a chief sinner, is probably one of the people that was the least mindful in what I was doing. But that's why we educate ourselves and broaden our awareness and our knowledge. So I'm Louren. I come from a legal background. I completed my LLB at Tux, so the University of Pretoria. I then went into corporate work and it kind of expanded my horizons a little bit with my honors at GIBS in leadership. And I guess somewhere along the line, I started becoming quite involved with self-mastery, as a topic or as a concept, and looked at developing myself more on the emotional intelligence side instead of hard factual learning. And that kind of started the journey to where I am today. So I'm an internationally accredited mindfulness life coach. And I also completed my mindfulness teacher training. That was through Mindful Revolutions, and I completed 200 hours of mindfulness practices, which is a lot. It sounds like it's not a lot, but it's a lot. Yeah, and I'm also quite involved and passionate about the environment, looking after the environment, and leaving things a bit more sustainable than we found them. So yeah, I think that's one of my main kind of ways to introduce myself. Apart from that, I'm a daughter, a mother, and I think my biggest teachers in life are my children and my pets. So yeah.
Beautiful. So let's just start off by introducing what the segment is actually about. And then we would really love for you to delve into your own journey of shifting from grudge to grit, grace, and gratitude. What does that actually mean for you? Because every week we are enriched by the stories that we hear and how everybody has gone on their, what I like to refer to as their hero's journey, and how they come out victoriously amidst the pain, amidst the suffering and the darkness. So before we do that, I want to acknowledge everybody that's here on the Instagram page. Thank you for joining us, as well as those that are our regulars, as Jamila had said. And please make this interactive. Louren would love your engagement here today. So don't be silent. Please connect with us, ask questions, give your own stories. And here are two mindfulness experts sitting on the panel today. So please shoot with any questions you might have around it. So over to you, Louren. Tell us about what this means for you in terms of moving from grudge to grit, grace, and gratitude.
So, Lisa, I guess all of us can be successful, right? It's a matter of hard work, accumulating facts, and kind of knowing how to regurgitate them at the right time. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you will find grit in your life. It doesn't mean that you're going to achieve that in a graceful way. And it really doesn't mean that at the end of the day, you'll have anything to be grateful for. I mean, we see it so often. So many millionaires or people that are highly successful that find no value in life or find no purpose in life. And I guess one of the big points is to achieve whatever your route to success is in such a way that you can sit back one day and have that kind of gratitude for what you've done by living gracefully or by having the grit. And grit is so much more than just being tough or hard. We often think that it would take a certain state or a certain way of being to achieve something, but true grit is actually somebody who gets to go quite far with bringing others along with them. I think there's quite a strong African proverb that says that if you want to go far, you can go alone, but if you want to go further, you must learn to do that with others, right? I think we've got such a limited time on earth, and we've got such unique ways of showing up on earth that you really do yourself quite a misfortune when you're living your life solely to impress and enjoy it for yourself, when in the meantime you really could have a positive impact and influence and leave quite an inspirational message of love and hope for others in spite of what it is that you face. Because grit is a big part of the story. None of us are going to get out of this alive, and none of us are going to come out of it unscathed, right? Proportionate to what you've encountered, you are going to encounter some suffering, and your need for resilience is going to have to come in there if you really do have dreams or things that you would like to achieve. So, Anissa, I say that's kind of what it means to me. But the big meaning to it all is to actually find meaning in it, to stop at some point and say, this is where I am. And this is the meaning I want to bring into it. And in that, we're artists as human beings. We can all paint the picture as we want to see it. We totally capable of living life in the way we want to have it there. And instead of just sitting back and thinking, is this making me happy? The question starts becoming whether I am happy, because I don't have to delay it to some or other event at some point in time. I can cultivate and manifest it right where I am in the process as well, and just fall in love with the process.
So you're saying that there shouldn't really be a destination to happiness. Are we that now? And maybe talk to us about that in the context of mindfulness. Maybe share that with us. How do we practice that?
So comfortable with that, Anissa. Mindfulness is exactly that. It's finding the now, and it's actually quite a powerful thing because it forms part of cognitive behavioral therapy, and a lot of people see it as something soft or airy-fairy, and it's something that we can forgive easily because it does feel like one of those soft concepts that's out there, the people playing in the flower fields and all of that, but it's not, right? It's actually quite a practical thing, and it's easy to bring it back to people. There's science behind it. I think effectively our brains need time to assimilate information and to file it. If you look at your desk, our brains have a lot of information floating around, and our brain has a need to settle down and to organize things and to sort out which needs to go where. And you actually do need to be still or find some quiet in your life to achieve that. And if you don't, it's going to catch up with you at some point, right? And I guess that's how a lot of people start learning about this once they've already started facing the negative side of it. If we just keep busy and we keep ourselves distracted, we don't have that opportunity to take that breath and to organize our minds and to organize our awareness and focus. And what would happen to you that night is when you're lying down in your bed, suddenly your brain will see it as the opportunity to start organizing thoughts. And you would experience that as, why am I having all of these thoughts all of a sudden? And it's not. They've always been there. They've just been disorganized and they haven't been dealt with. So I guess one of the big aspects of mindfulness is it's an opportunity to take a step back, to be in the moment and to listen to yourself and to be quite aware of your body. and to give yourself a chance to file those things, to organize those things, to let your thoughts become more empowered. We talk a lot about empowering ourselves or empowering others or empowering communities and situations, but we don't actually harness any of that power. We keep running around in busy distractions, right? So it's that opportunity in terms of cognitive behavioral therapy to give your brain an opportunity just to make those connections. And at the end of the day, intelligence is just about a brain that's highly connected in its neuron system. And it's better than medication. So you can take medication for panic or for anxiety, but ultimately there's a lot more effective things that you can also do that aids you without side effects and a lot more long term. So it's an opportunity that you give yourself to rewire your brain or to get rid of your negative thinking or your processes of thinking, and to make more connections in your neurons that helps you process your thought patterns. So you kind of step away from this idea that I'm just temporarily enduring suffering, and you actually build some tenacity in how you approach that, and how you kind of resolve your emotions and deal those emotions. But I see a question here on addictions, and I'll say, Ronald, the first point is all of us are addicted. All of us have highly addictive personalities. And if you look at our way of living right now, is a lot of things in what we're doing is instantaneous, dopamine driven, and distraction driven. So mindfulness is coming to awareness in the present moment, allowing yourself to just be here in the here and now. And in that process, you identify triggers, you try and manage intense emotions, and you kind of move from this need to react to everything to start responding to everything. And that is the situation where you sit here and you say, I might, because I myself am quite addicted to nicotine, right, and caffeine and all of those things, but you can tell yourself, I might be addicted to nicotine, but I have an opportunity as a human being to control that, because very often we live in response to our thoughts. I have it written down here as well, saying we often, I don't know if you've heard people running around saying, I'm not coping with my workload. I'm not coping with this, or I can't deal, right? I love saying that. I can't deal. But you can rephrase that or reframe that, and you can say to yourself, I realize I'm having a thought that I'm not coping with something. And you can rewire that in saying, temporarily, I am not coping, but there are things that I can do in terms of my self-awareness to change that for myself. And it becomes such a process of grace, because you can decide in what situations you love yourself more in than the outcome that you used to get before. If you struggle with anger, there's so many things we're addicted to our big emotions. We have people that are extremely addicted to big love, and big love can also be just as harmful and just as dangerous, right? You can tell yourself, I'm feeling these things, but you can have an impact in your response to that. It doesn't mean that we don't feel. It just means that we start thinking about how we respond to these different things. It gives you a bit of an action plan. And for that, you need to have a vision or a goal or a place to where you want to go. And that's why I say it's a little bit more effective than medication, because I guess the aim with medication is to blunt you out, right? And to make you not feel. And it's a very dangerous thing. We will do meditation, but meditation, mindfulness, it's not the same thing. Meditation is something you need to do in an isolated and a quiet place. And the world is not that. The world is everything but that. And I guess mindfulness is something that you take with you where you go. You can have a therapist. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the point is, I can't take my therapist with me into my boardroom. So what do I do then? There's going to be situations where if I suffer from anxiety or from panic disorder, whether I have my medication or not, it will never stop the external environment from exerting its pressure on me. And I guess our pressures don't stop. and we allow different pressures to develop in our minds and become stronger or more empowered, instead of empowering ourselves in the process to kind of take hold of that, think about it, and decide what we're going to let free or what we're going to hold on to. Because at the same time as well, something that's quite powerful is like I used to really, really suffer from anxiety and panic disorder. So just to maybe allow myself the space to be quite vulnerable, I studied hard, worked hard, and I worked in an industry that you're right or wrong, there's black or white, and there's judgment on everything that you do, and there's an outcome, and there's an immediate, dealing every day with the outcomes of people's temporary choices. And it drives a certain way of being. And I'm quite a driven individual. So in absence of having other things driving you, you drive yourself. And unfortunately, our process of driving ourselves is very often through critical talk or negative self-talk. So it would be, a drive because of. So in my situation, it was, I'm a redhead. They teased me at school, but I showed them when I got the best marks, things like that. It's quite a competitive way of being. And I didn't realize what I was doing. I thought I was working hard. I thought I was doing the right things. And then very quickly, I had a situation where, my father passed away, and we knew he was sick, but we didn't know it would happen that quickly. And I guess the reality of responding in life without being his daughter was a lot more dawning than I thought it would be, even though we knew for quite some time that it was going to happen, right? I think all of us know that we're going to face loss, but when that actually took place, I experienced things. So I was coping really well because we did the funeral, we unpacked the house, we did all the stuff, we did everything right. But when I went back home, I just had a weight on my chest and I couldn't breathe. And my marriage was falling apart. And I started realizing that the need for me to step out as who I am is so much stronger now than what it was before, because I wasn't someone's daughter and I wasn't someone's wife. I had to know who I am. And I guess when we stay busy or we stay distracted or preoccupied, we don't ask that question. I think it was Socrates at the Order of Delphi that it just has two words, the main aim of all the philosophical thoughts over all that time saying, know thyself. And I guess we leave that for situations. So self-identification became quite a thing. And actually it was something that I faced a lot of panic and anxiety over. I struggled to breathe. And I quite oftenly went to hospital or emergency rooms. And effectively, I mean, as a single mom, there wasn't time for that. There wasn't a chance for that. My work needed me. I was building my career. I was raising children, and I didn't get the chance to take 5 days out and just have my panic. And what was strange for me is this was just one that was weighing on my chest. I'd lost other people before, or I'd experienced this before, but this was so different. This was just debilitating. And the only answer people had for me was to drink medication until it goes away. And I realized, but it's never going to go away. It's the loss is never going to go away. Not knowing who I am on my own, apart from a principle of right and wrong and judgments or criticism, if I don't sort that out, this feeling would never go away. So I think it started becoming a better response to stress, is to give me a skill on how to work through different emotions. And the second part of that story is I had to go back to work as a fallible human being that had endured loss and that had not had the perfect family and that did not have a picket fence. And I took time off work, but when I had to return to work, I had to become a very different person. And I guess all of my colleagues or people in my environment or in my communities had known me, but they'd known me as an iron woman. I mean, people used to make a joke and they used to call me the ice queen that always says no, so I had a name. I had a kind of there was an attitude or an air around me about how how high my walls were or how strong I was. But it wasn't strength. It was actually exactly the opposite of that. It was running away from real grit. Because, you know, you can pretend to be strong when you're in an isolated castle, never doing anything wrong. Ronald, I see you're saying that you also forgot who you were. And it's difficult to share at a stage, because then in this process, I had to go back and face communities and say that, you know, I'm not a wife and I'm not a daughter anymore, and I'm struggling with that. And I was actually working on a project just before I had to go off on leave, and in a position of leadership, I set down exactly what needed to be done in the project. And while I was on leave, I was still, you know, putting together things for my dad's funeral. And as a family, we were sorting things out. But in the back of my mind, I knew for a fact that this POC that I'm working on is probably not going to go anywhere, you know, because you just have this feeling that if you're not there, nothing's going to carry on. And what happened is I then went back into the different communities that I'd come from, and I shared exactly what had happened. And when I got back, they did better. They did better than what I expected. And the people were happy to do that for me. And I had an opportunity to meet with people and to tell them, I'm fallible, I'm feeling broken, and I don't know I have no idea what I'm doing. And there was such power in that, because I think I saw so much beauty in people. So I don't know, we might have some Afrikaans people on the line. Here in South Africa, we speak Afrikaans as well. And in Afrikaans, they say people are the mensdom. So if you had to actually translate that, it's, you know, people stupid. It's the community stupid. And in English, you say mankind. And I think that's a beautiful evolution, because I think I might have responded to communities as mensdom, but I started learning that there's such beauty in connected living, in vulnerable living, and that there really is a power in mankind, because it doesn't matter who you encounter in the power of vulnerability. There's such an opportunity to just see so much beauty. So, you know, you can learn so much from your stress, you can learn so much from others, but mindfulness for me was coming back to the present moment. I think my panic was so bad, I started having to take asthma pumps and things like that. And I started realizing that I needed to take a step back and just see, okay, this is starting to happen. What can I do about that? I can actually breathe. And there's something called box breathing that I think is really beautiful. You just breathe in for 4 seconds. And then you hold it for 4 seconds. And you breathe out for 4 seconds. And it's the easiest thing. Wherever you go, you can do that. And once you do that, I guess you can think a little bit about things and then respond. Eventually, in coming back to the community and having shared what my truths were, I met so many amazing single mothers that were similarly struggling with things. I met so many other daughters that had lost fathers, had lost parents, that it meant so much. And you start realizing that this is a process and it's part of life, and you can let anything break you, or you can let something actually completely change you. So I went through a process that I like to refer to as transformative reconstruction. That's when you realize I'm not an end state being yet. I'm not my higher self. And if I am, I'm probably going to die because I've accomplished my task. So I need to be where I am right now and really be grateful for it. You know, in the mornings when I go out and I feel the sun on my skin, it's such a precious thing, because I realize at some point when I leave the earth, I'm going to miss situations like that, physical parts of living, such as just the sun on your skin, that moment where you just feel kissed by the earth. So I think you know, when we actually come back into the present moments, we give ourselves such a big opportunity to just see what's happening around us, not as intrinsically involved into it, but just from an awareness perspective, having no judgment over it and just knowing that it's there. And it's actually been scientifically proven that it increases our ability when we are just in the moment and aware of the moment. It increases our ability to have acceptance and joy, which is crazy because we delay it to something in the future. So we're either running around in the future or we're running around in the past about the things I can't change, the things I regret. We either live there or, you know, some of these aunties that have pictures up on the walls from, oh, those days when I had those legs, or, oh, one day I have that body, I'd be so happy. But it's not true, because you're going to be skinny and just as annoyed with yourself as you were yesterday if you don't start doing about it, right? So we
So
delay our
Lauren,
gratitude. Yes.
so I'm so like I'm in awe listening to you, and I think we want to honor giving you some more time to go into the story. But I also want to just acknowledge you because you've shared quite vulnerably across different fronts in your life, on the personal and professional. And I want to acknowledge the comments and those that are here shortly, but just in response to what you have shared thus far, it does take courage, because to show up in not the Iron Lady that is perceived to the world, and actually say, but hold on, this is not the persona that I am, takes guts, because you earned a certain level, you earned a name, but you earned a certain level of respect with that. People honored Louren because she stood by her word, and her word was, you know, it was gold, and she wouldn't maybe necessarily falter from that. So there's good and bad to the way we show up and how people perceive us. And sometimes it's overused and sometimes it's underused even. So I just firstly want to acknowledge you for sharing so openly. I mean, being a single mom, I can relate to, I'm sure Jamila as well. Loss and grief is definitely, we all experience loss and grief, not only in the sense of people leaving this earthly realm, but loss of the identity we thought we would have been or wanted to become. And then we lose sight of that version of ourselves, and we very much want to hold on to it. So there's so many that you've touched on here. Could I just honor greeting some of the guests on the side, and I say the side
Yeah.
on the Instagram. Firoza and Rhinos and Samiha, thank you for joining us. Please do share your own vulnerable stories that you've had to go through, where you were, for lack of a better word, in your monkey mind. It was chaos, it was turmoil. Please, and thank you, Ronald. You've shared a bit of exactly that. The addictions we all have. I think you've already responded to that. Then we spoke, Ronald said, yes, I'm rebuilding my head drive, or maybe it's hard drive, yes, and reloading wetware. Or is it intended to be head drive? I think there's a pun in that, with new approaches in life. And then respond, not react. But yes, when we're in that monkey mind and we're in that victim consciousness that the whole world is against us, it's very difficult to take the pause. You know, so how do we take the pause when it feels like we're just totally overwhelmed by life? And then there were a few other comments from you, Ronald. You're sharing what, yes, we all have the same journey that we're walking, and the context might be different, but we hold it in or we suppress, which causes the chaos and the turmoil. And I'll share one more comment. I also like that transformative reconstruction. It's beautiful. I love it. I even want to delve more into that, and what does that tangibly mean? And then not to be identified by roles and responsibilities, skills and talents. So Jamila, is there anything that's pressing for you based on that wisdom and all the nuggets that Louren shared thus far? Do you want to tap into?
So many things, Anissa, that resonates, you know, from what Louren has just mentioned, and I'm sure with you as well, especially with us as single moms. Not that it's unique to us and our situation, but we get so caught up in this world, you know, and like you say, it's a monkey mind, and we've got all these responsibilities, and we've got the kids to deal with, and we are never truly in the present. And I think it's so important for us to be vulnerable, but be vulnerable enough to stop the judgment against ourselves, because we are hardest on ourselves or most of the time. And I think that we go through our lives, well, me at least, to prove something. Louren, you know, you had your issues as a redhead, and my business partner also is a redhead. And, you know, he's spoken to me about all the insecurities that he's dealing with or he's carried with him from his childhood because of that. And you have this mindset of, I'm going to prove that I'm good enough. I'm going to prove that I fit in. I'm going to prove this, that, and the other. So
you think it's grit, hey, Jamila? You think that's grit?
Exactly. We think that's grit, but these are triggers that we've never actually sat and dealt with. And it's so important for us, and this is what mindfulness allows me to do, is to sit with that and to look at the issues and to look at myself from a vulnerable perspective, but also from a real perspective, and not just looking at the positives within me, but looking at my flaws and acknowledging them and being okay with that, and letting go of the judgment of or the expectation of wanting to be that perfect person, because none of us really are we? And like you say, you know, if you're now speaking to your higher self, then you might as well be dead, because then that's the end of your journey. And this is my thing, is that we are constantly peeling away layers of the onion, you know, to reveal who we truly are, and that journey is never ever complete. But as much as we want to acknowledge the good in us, we need to also acknowledge our vulnerabilities. We need to acknowledge the things that we still need to work on to make us better people. So I think what's really important for me in my journey, or understanding in my journey thus far, is to stop the judgment of myself, because that, I feel, is more crippling than anyone else who has judgment over you. And that's what mindfulness has taught me. Do you resonate with that? What are your feelings about that? Is there something that you've gone through in your life that you can comment on about that self-judgment and self-criticism that can really be crippling to people?
Yeah, Jamila, I think the biggest danger with it is we think it's a driver. We think that we can make it a driving force, but it is going to catch up with you, because the way that you speak to yourself inside of you very quickly starts setting the pace of how you're willing to interact with others. So if I wake up every morning and I try and make myself look good by telling myself that I look terrible, then the chances are quite big that I'm going to be showing up in the world in the same way. It's just a few filters away. So the second you put me under stress, I'm going to start struggling to manage that. So we might have it in the beginning as a driving force, but it's not going to serve you for long. And you know, you need to start asking yourself what your values are, because it's only then that you can start figuring out what's valuable to you. And that needs to start becoming your driver, determining where it is you want to go, why you want to go there, why it's valuable. And if you really do find value in yourself, you don't need the negative talk. You can actually start getting there by driving yourself just by saying, remember that this meant something. It might not mean something to me that much anymore as it did in the past, but I need to honor that person as well. So if it means something to you, it's going to be a very positive driver in any event. But we need to cut out getting there, because your version of success is very limited, and you know it's not sustainable. And I want to address the monkey in the room, right? I can hear it, so we'll see a lot of comments as well on monkey brain. And I think a very powerful moment for me in this journey with dealing with anxiety or panic was exactly that. You know, I said to them, I struggle so much with thinking. I think too much. I think about everything. You know, I could sit in a room and cry about whales, you know, just the struggles of whales. I'm such an empathetic being that the worries of this world was overwhelming me. And this friend of mine looked back at me and she said to me, don't you think the world could do with a few more thinking people? Because the world is in chaos because everybody is doing and not thinking. So are your thoughts really that bad? And learning to embrace it was so beautiful because it gave me an opportunity to rewire it.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to realize that your anxiety is your powerhouse. So when I was anxious about something coming, it meant that I needed to take action. So anxiety is the best way to stop your procrastination, but we try not to feel. So we push it away and it comes back, and we push it away and it comes back. But when I have anxiety, now I stop and I go, what am I anxious about? I was finding myself quite anxious 2 days ago because my children were traveling. And I struggled to sleep. I struggled to rest. I struggled to stop myself from being distracted or having well-focused thoughts. And I stopped and I realized, time to reach out. I'm getting anxious. And I sent messages out and I said, please think of me, or please hold a bit of space for me. I'm really feeling quite anxious because I'm not supposed to be able to do it on my own, everyone. I can't have everything under control all the time. So if I start realizing that I'm getting these feelings, then I'm getting good at it because I've recognized them time after time. So I know where this is going, and it's something as small. So it's important to know your triggers. It's important to know yourself, your breathing patterns, how your body is doing, because the second it changes, you can start going, hold on a minute, I know this one. This one leads to something. And I reached out and I messaged a dear, a friend of mine, and I just said, sis, I'm struggling a bit. I feel anxious about the children traveling. And she said, but it's because you're a good mom. And you start going, okay, that's fair. That's an opportunity to rewire it. Thinking isn't a bad thing. People always say, stop overthinking. No, think it through. Think it finished. Go embrace the thought. Take yourself away and think then, because then obviously that's what you need to do. We can't stop thinking. You can't live that way either. So expecting yourself to just stop overthinking is impossible. And if we actually do think about it, if we go back to our monkey brain and actually embrace that and embrace the chance of being cavemen, then anxiety served you the best, because that's why we're here. We're all products of evolution. And we're products of evolution working well. So if I woke up in the morning, walked outside of my cave, stretched out and just embraced the day, I would probably have been eaten by a tiger because it was easy prey. So we got here with evolutionary thinking, which was fast-paced, which was, how can I best protect myself? How can I build my walls? How can I keep moving? How can I keep going when I'm tired? What do I do to never give up? I need to carry on running. I need to look for food. I need to look for safety. You're always going to be in that mind. And I think, trying to pretend like you mustn't be is unfair to yourself, because that's why you're here. You're an evolved being because of it. Now, the opportunity you have is, how do I embrace that monkey brain, get to know it, become friends with it, and allow it to evolve me further? Because I'm quite shocked that the only contribution to evolution my generation has is the loss of wisdom teeth and a very small pinky toe. I'd like that to be more. I'd like for people to think about this as a generation that really shifted the dial in emotional intelligence, in self-awareness, in not beating your children just because you were beaten, maybe actually fostering a relationship with them. So, yeah. So I think, let's think about how you embrace your monkey brain. Think about it, learn from it, and be grateful for it, because that's why we're here.
Yeah. Lauren, it resonates deeply with me because I was watching with my daughter. I think it's Moses is on Netflix at the moment. And, it's such a powerful story, his life and the journey he walked. and he had so many anger issues, but it's not so much about shaming those anger issues because it is part of us. And I was saying to my daughter that I was raised in a very unconscious home, and so the way I sometimes show up is that unconscious parenting, but I am more mindfully aware that I'm doing it and I'm wanting to break the cycle. But sometimes ego plays a role, and then I will kind of not only push her away, but whoever else is. But it's just that ego at that point. But the point is, it is part of me. I cannot shame that very essence that was a powerhouse. I love that you said that, because we tend to say, well, if you're the people pleaser, it's a bad thing. No, because you're empathetic. When you are overusing people pleasing, then you know that's a trigger to be mindful of and concerned. So I feel mindfulness is knowing the duality and the polarity within us as human beings, not only human doings, right? And that we are human and we are fallible and we will make those mistakes. And the judgment, Jamila, I'm very passionate about how do we eradicate judgment, but we cannot if we don't release the judgment lens within ourselves. So it took me many years to get here to finally say, well, I'm good enough, I'm worthy enough, I belong, because the people pleasing that I did was simply because I did not feel like I belonged. So I would be going above and beyond in all my circles, so much so that I would harbor resentment towards
There we
others if
go.
they would not reciprocate. And then I had to realize, but hold on, this is my own stuff. And so I try and have these sort of conversations around, it's not about shaming the ugly monsters when we show up as those ugly monsters. And it's not about labeling everybody that they're narcissistic, because we all, in our own right, have narcissistic personality traits. So
And Lisa, I want to come in there, right? Because at the same time, we have these buzzwords, as man, and at a stage, everyone would say, just be positive about it. So stop being a people pleaser. Just but all of these things, calling other people narcissists all the time, all of these things are just so that I think that one of the big things is to sit back and ask yourself how sustainable that is, because just be positive. You cannot just be positive. You can't cultivate that way of being, and then you'll start becoming quite positive. I'll sit there and smile and go, I feel like I'm having a nervous breakdown, but at least it's a good day. And that's not it, right? That is not it. It means actually having the opportunity to confront it, because like you said, in your situation with people pleasing, the second you start saying, I'm going to stop pleasing others, you're acting unnaturally towards yourself. So, I mean, you can embrace it and say, I'm a person of service. I'm a person that lives entrenched in the well-being of others. But I'm part of that circle. I'm part of the value that I'm trying to create. And you are allowed to then start taking a step back, but you'd only implement sustainable boundaries when you start realizing that you are also someone of worth. And that takes work. That takes
that speaks to self-love, doesn't it? And allowing yourself to start loving yourself, seeing the positives within yourself, as well as all the so-called negative qualities, and embracing it and loving all of you, not just being selective in what you think is acceptable to love. So for me, loving myself, warts and all, flaws and all, has been the basis of my journey towards knowing myself and self-actualization. So I think that's really important, is is to really love yourself for who you are. And the only way that you're going to start doing that is to start acknowledging and being aware of who Jamila really is. And we seldom take the time to sit down, to find that pause or that quiet time to understand who I am as a person, what I need, why am I people pleasing, what is it that I'm getting out of it, why am I looking at myself as a victim when actually I want people's approval. And it's being real and raw and honest with who you are that will allow you to give to others. And that's the only way that you can give to others, or not to judge others.
I have a question for both of you ladies. Hi, Rio. Thank you for joining on the Instagram side. I have a question for both of you, right? And in fact, for everyone listening here, because I have this thing that I'm not going to hide if I'm emotional or I'm crying. And for instance, last week, I had a pity party for myself. I was emotional. I was crying. Okay, my daughter came to me the next day and she said, or sometime during the day, and said, "Wait, is it us?" And I was like, "No, my girl, I'm human, and it gets much. It gets a lot as a single mom to deal with it all." And you know, we are in a sacred month, Lauren, of fasting. So you're up earlier, you're spiritually more connected, so you feel a lot more, right? And you want to get closer to your creator. Then we still deal with judgment. Jamila knows what I'm talking about because Jamila and I don't wear the hijab. So how do you deal with, do you shy away from not showing the world that you're crying? Or do you cry in front of your kids and whoever you need to?
I had a big thing in my life, Anissa, where I struggle so much with lying. It's I can't. I'm not even good at surprises, because I'll tell you, I've got a surprise for you. It's that chocolate you wanted. I can't wait to give it to you. Right. So I'm terrible. And so coming into parenting, you know, I've always struggled with the idea of, you know, potentially lying to my children, because I give it away so easily. So when I'm not authentic, everyone knows it at this point in time. So it's impossible for me to separate that. I enjoy coming into the room saying, today I feel a certain way. And the reason for that is that it allows me a chance to find out how other people are feeling. So I'm feeling this way. How are you? And actually let how are you become the conversation and not the introduction to the conversation. So I find a lot of value in checking in with myself and others. But apart from that, the opportunities for holding space, making myself vulnerable enough in how I am in that specific day to give somebody else that might be more learned on a part of living than me to speak into that and to give me advice and to help me to readily accept that. For me, I see all of that as a radical act of self-love and others' love. So we have to be self-aware and others aware. So, you know, you're also not going to be doing any good by walking around in your emotions all the time, saying, you know, that I think it's important also, so I'm not saying that. So I'm not going into every boardroom every day crying. I'm going into the boardroom saying, this is tough. I'm doing it, but this is tough. And I'm going to need someone's support down the line. But in that, tell me where I can support you, because we have different strengths, right? And in that is different opportunities. So I don't think hiding it away. There is obviously time for a total defrag. For me, that's fishing. So getting away from everything is the craziest thing, but it's what I love. So, you know, finding your good takeouts or your takeaways, those getting away from it all moments. But the point is we can't live such a life that we have to distract our living the whole time by leaving it. We've got to find paradise in the situations where we are in. And that you do by finding worth from what you're doing. And you can't do that without connection. So when I honestly say, this is Louren, who am I, you know, I give somebody else an opportunity to tell me how they're doing. And it gives us an opportunity to be human. And in that, start building on our network or our relationship or our friendship or whatever it may be to just hold space for each other and develop whatever it is what we're doing in a more authentic way. And normally that sparks the safety for innovation. So very often, it feels like a soft skill that's going to detract from forward momentum. But very often when someone feels valuable enough that you're actually trying to find out how they are, they contribute more, they speak more, they bring their ideas to the fore. So I'd say it's a missed opportunity if you don't.
I think for me, growing up in a family and community where everything is supposedly meant to be perfect, no matter what you're going through in your life. And for me, observing my parents' relationship, they never fought a day or argued or had words with each other in front of us. So I assume that that's what life was all about. And I think that after my divorce, I tried to emulate the same for my son. And I made it seem as if everything was great and everything was perfect and things were, unfolding the way that they were meant to, despite what I was going through. So I was literally like a duck on water, seemingly composed on the outside, but frantically, treading around and trying to keep everything in place. And Anissa, to your point, I never ever broke down in front of my son. I would cry in the shower, or I'd cry when I know that he was fast asleep. And now today I can say that, I didn't even really know whether he knew or he didn't know. But there came a point where you have to let go and you have to shed those undue expectations that we place on ourselves to make everything seem seemingly perfect when it isn't, because that's not what life is all about. It's all about the yin and the yang, the challenges and the failures that make us successful in our lives. And it came really, really later on in my son's life when he was almost an adult, And when I sat down and I said to him, and I think there was an expectation on him about me and what I was doing. And I had to sit down with him and say, parents are not perfect beings. They're human beings, which means that we are fallible. We make mistakes. We make wrong decisions. And it's still okay. It's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. So acknowledging that for myself and being honest with my child and showing him that I am a person of emotions and feelings and disappointments and the crying and just allowing them to see that real person that you are is really, really very important in who they turn out to be. And
Agreed.
That goes back also to breaking the generational cycles, and changing the patterns and behaviors that we so often think are normal when they actually are not.
Yeah, definitely. That's a nice point leading into the question I want to ask Louren is really, so how do you then balance the empathy aspect that we're talking about here and compassion, and then look at how do you look at that from an assertiveness perspective? How do you balance assertiveness with grace in either these challenging circumstances that we have to grow through? And I use the word grow through because it's not easy.
But Anissa, I think that's where you've got to let life happen, because there's such beauty in little things, right? And I think that's where the grace comes in. The second you shift your awareness to focusing on your own gratitude, I think you'll start taking time to notice things. So I have a strange tattoo on my arm. It's weird, but I put it there intentionally. So it's a little heart balloon. And Ava, my youngest daughter, used to draw a heart on a piece of string. So she never drew normal hearts, and it was weird. I never understood it. So in this journey of becoming more mindful or taking more time, and to your point, I was always quite concerned about, I wanted to be an iron lady teaching my children about discipline and how to show up in the world and to be successful. And you've got to do your homework. You must do extramurals. You must be in a team sport and in individual sports. and chess and music is good for you and you have got to develop culturally. It's a massive responsibility taking ownership for someone's life. And I just had to take a step back and say, you need to be a bloody good human, and I need to be a good human too. And it wasn't that check-in, and I was worried about the amount of emotion I'm displaying. But I never realized that I'm actually raising two emotionally savvy children that can actually give a name to what they're feeling, and that allows them to regulate it and strive. And there was a day, a particular day that I felt really down, and Ava came into my room and she said to me, Mom, how are you doing? And I said to her, Ava, today I don't feel like I have it all under control. Today I'm struggling a bit. And she would say, well, that's okay, Mommy. And she went downstairs and she drew me a picture. And it was a picture of a heart on a balloon. And she brought it up to me. And she wrote, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but she wrote
Bring it
Mom.
closer to the screen. Yes.
Mom.
Mom. No, yes.
Just Mom like
yes,
that.
Now,
M-O,
yes.
With a little heart on a string. And in that moment, I looked at it and I wanted to find value in the moment, in my relationship with her. So I guess that's what I'm saying. If you want to find it, you'll find it. You'll find it in a colleague smiling at you. You'll find it in, I drove down a road yesterday and there's a homeless man with a best fed dog. If you want to see those things, you'll see it because it's there. Life is beautiful. And so she came over to me with this drawing and I looked at the heart on the string and I thought, but that means we must let our hearts be wild and free. We must have hearts that easily move and float. And when that happened, she dropped the picture and I was just laughing about her little heart balloon on a string, thinking about how valuable that is. She never drew a static, still standing heart. It was always a heart that can move and flow with the wind. And as that happened, she dropped the picture and it fluttered away in the wind. And when it went away, she turned around and she said, Mom. I said, what? She said, you won't believe it. Look at this. And the picture turned upside down. And if you do that, Mom becomes wow.
It's wow.
And it gives you chances. There's little things and little stories and little answers for yourself that you might feel like you're failing in the process, but the little things are wow. And that's what I want to live. I've also got a quote that I want to actually read to you. It's one toy talking to another toy, and the one toy is a little bit falling apart. And the new toy sits there and kind of asks why are you looking like this? And it's from the Velveteen Rabbit. And the other toy says, real isn't how you are made. It's a thing that happens to you. So when a child loves you for a long, long time and really loves you, you get a chance to become real. So you become. It takes a long time. And that's why it doesn't happen often, or to people who break easily, or to people that have sharp edges, or have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair would be loved off, and your eyes drop out, and you get all loose in your joints, and you look very shabby. But these things don't really matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly anymore, except to those who don't understand anything.
That's beautiful.
So it's just the process of becoming real, right?
Authentic, raw, real, all of it, right? Well, I must just say that my kids will say Mom is made of money. I don't know what to do.
I agree with that one.
Jamila, do you have any final question for Louren to close out with in the last minute? And then I'd like to just acknowledge again a few of Ronald's comments that he made.
I think, Louren, maybe if you can just share quickly a few takeaways or tools that people can use towards mindfulness and achieving mindfulness in their lives.
I think just, looking at that emotional intelligence, The way we're moving right now, there's so much automation, there's so much fear about where technology is going to take us. And I think one of the big ways to actually equip yourself and to be relevant and competitive for the future lies in these airy-fairy things. So, you know, I want to be the sign that tells you that it is time to start thinking about it, because it is highly relevant. You know, the factor on being savvy with emotions is effectively what's going to be quite cardinal for mankind in the future. And then to also maybe shift the thinking about just, you know, thinking that we have to be self-aware and self-managed, to also thinking about how we are others aware and others managed as well. I think we have different levels of these things, where in the beginning we concern ourselves and our development, and then later we start wanting to make a difference and leaving a legacy in the communities that we come from, and maybe taking that even wider into the world. It's important to understand what you value, what your values are, and what you find valuable. I think at this point in time, in the greater macroeconomic context, there's so much economic pressure. There's so much pressure on people in general that they are giving themselves away as a personal sacrifice. A lot of buzzwords going around now saying, do more with less. Sweat the asset when you're the asset, or, you know, cut all costs but give more. I think we need to understand the humanity, and maybe if you don't find the value in the ways that you're looking for it, at least learn to find the value in who you are, how you show up, and what your next steps are, and how you kind of look at your own life. We shouldn't let these external things amend the inner value that we have. We should be at a point where we're able to be quite resilient towards that. At the end of the day, I think all of it is about finding radical acts of love, either towards ourselves or to the organizations that we find ourselves serving, the families that we belong to, but also of ourselves. And maybe if it's just a radical act of love, to look inwardly and to say, hats off, you know, you did a good thing, and to focus on that, instead of waking up in the morning finding critique for yourself to try and overcome. You know, I think you'd lead a much happier and a much longer life if you just learn to live with awareness and acceptance towards who you really are, instead of trying to serve that away, or to act determined and hope it goes away at some point in time, because you're never going to get that compliment, right? You can live without that compliment. Your view of yourself and how you embrace yourself is critically important for the own story that you're going to tell in any event, whether it's be work or family related. Finding peace within yourself is ultimately, I think, one of the highest goals we can achieve.
On that note, Jamila, any last comment? Because we are on almost 1 hour, 3 minutes, believe it or not. So I want to just say thank you to Louren. From my side, it's been a delight. It's been lovely listening to you, learning from you. And it's just interesting to hear all these. The essence of what you're telling us is there's a gift and opportunity in everything. And find that. Find the magic and the gift. So I want to thank those that are here, that have joined us, that are still with us even after the hour. And for our amazing Ronald with so many comments, we'll try to respond post the session. For those watching the replay, thank you for coming back to watch the replay. And I just want to hand over to my beautiful co-host, Jamila, on taking us out to say goodbye and any last comments.
Yes, I just want to thank you, Louren. It's always such a pleasure and an honor. And, you know, the time is never enough listening to you and your wisdom and your listening to your lovely journey as you go along. And thank you for this time and for setting aside the time on this public holiday, after all. And thank you to all our listeners, especially to our old faithful Ronald, for always being here and for always being so participative in these podcasts. And to everyone else, thank you for joining week after week. Please do comment. And if you have any questions for Louren, I'm sure that we will still be able to take it on any of the platforms. streamed, and Louren will, I'm sure, respond to that. Yeah, but just a blessed weekend ahead, and we will see you all next week.
Next week. On that note, Louren, I always stay on a little bit longer, so I'm going to end the live. Please stay with us just as a quick debrief, and goodbye, everyone, until next week.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, ladies.